Okay gang, remember when in 2020 I made this? You know, Dimitri's big fluffy cape that I was obsessed with. And I said probably in that video that I was never going to make the armour because I really couldn't be bothered making all that armour. Yeah, hey, so I made the armour. I had a lot of fun making it. I have a lot of fun wearing Dimitri. Dimitri is one of my favourite cosplays ever to wear, so I'm gonna give a little bit of an overview of what the process for that was. This armour was very much an exercise in how a mainly sewing focused person might approach the world of foam. Because I used a lot of sewing based techniques in this. The first one of those being the prick and points method, which is usually found in vintage embroidery manuals. This is where you poke holes in the pattern. Because I used a pattern from this, big shout out to the Etsy shop Semi Cosplay, which has a wonderful Dimitri armour pattern. But I took this pattern and in order to transfer it to my foam, I pricked it full of holes along the lines, and then I rubbed chalk powder into those holes, which then transfers the pattern onto the foam. One other thing you may have noticed about this foam is that it really sucks. It's super thin, super porous, just completely unsuitable for most armour making. So we're trying to salvage it because I want to use up a lot of stuff that I have in my stash, and the way that I'm going to salvage it is by vinyl wrapping. Now you may have seen vinyl wrapping used before, probably not on something this thin and unstable. I am just coating this foam with as thin a layer as contact adhesive as I can before gently massaging this like stretch PVC wet look leatherette thing over it. You want the contact adhesive to be thin because otherwise it'll bleed through this particular very thin fabric that I'm using. Again, the fabric that I'm using isn't quite suitable for purpose, but it's in my stash. We are trying not to spend money here. We are just using up what we have in stock. I eventually got the hang of this by using a big lollipop stick to spread the contact adhesive very thinly. I also want to assure you that I am wearing a mask, just not a shot, and I probably should be wearing gloves for this, let's be honest. Once everything is glued down and nice and dry, I then flip it over and I start scoring the pattern of the plates into the backside of the cuirass. This is a technique kind of slightly based on the semi-cosplay tutorial that came with the pattern I bought, but I've adapted it quite a bit for my own process here. Once all those lines are scored, I then go in with a heat gun and just give the foam a good blast in order to open up all of those lines. I then fill all of those opened lines with hot glue to keep them open. And now this looks like nothing on the back, but then you turn it over and like, wow, it's so cool. Satisfied with the front of the cuirass, it's then time to actually finish the thing by gluing down the sides. Semi Cosplay has actually done quite a clever thing in constructing this cuirass all as one piece with the illusion of overlapping plates rather than like trying to do the armour plate by plate by plate, but it does mean that we are left with these holes and bits to add to create that illusion of overlapping plates. Now, you may see these little details that go on top of the cuirass, and you may also see that underneath those little details there are lines of stitching. This is because I have put Velcro on the other side. You may also see that there's Velcro on the sides of the cuirass. This is because my very special method of attaching the armour to myself is to wear a bodysuit that has Velcro on it and just stick it on. So I'm putting on my bodysuit. I'm just using the natural catchiness of the Velcro to catch to my bodysuit temporarily so that I can mark out where the other side of the Velcro needs to be. And then I'm just sewing that on, and it works really well and it's really comfy. And now to do the rest of the armour. It's the same as the cuirass. We're covering the foam with this material. The only difference is that this time I am adding a backing. So we are just gluing it onto the back after covering the front. The one thing that I am trying to keep in mind here is that these are going to be curved around my legs and arms. So I'm trying to kind of instill that curve into them so that the things will sort of sit and want to curve nicely. And that just means that in the way of curves that the inner fabric needs to be kind of smaller than the outer fabric. So we're just doing that. So I said I had made this armour using many sewing techniques, and of course one of those includes sewing. What I'm doing here is quite similar actually to paper patching. technique used to create patchwork quilts, where you wrap the fabric around a stable shape of newspaper in order to whip stitch it to its neighbours. So I'm doing that kind of thing to attach any seams here. The foam that I'm using is much too flimsy anyway to use with contact adhesive, and in the case of fabric, sewing is always stronger than gluing. If you want to see more of this kind of thing, I would highly recommend you go and check out Alexa Burlesque Brigade's golden armour, which was made using entirely sewing techniques. So I am sewing this armour anywhere that I can that it's not going to be obviously seen. Now, in the places that are going to be seen, that are aesthetics, I am of course using my normal foam gluing techniques, combined with wrapping to create all the layering that is found on Dimitri's bracers, knee pads, and the rest of his cuirass. Always keeping in mind that these are going to be on the curve of the body, so I'm trying to glue them in a state that is as close to their final shape as possible. And once all the layers are glued together, it is time for painting. The vinyl that we have wrapped this low quality foam in has left us with this wonderful, actually smooth, unblemished, untarnished surface, which is not what I think about when I think about Dimitri Firemblem. So we're going to be adding lots and lots of weathering to add that story back into him. We're going in first with a layer of black to create patina, because even though the navy creates a wonderful base to blend in with the rest of Dimitri's colour scheme, it's the armour he wears reads as black in the game and on screen, so we're trying to bring it closer to that. Now, next I'm going in with scuffs and scratches. I'm imagining this armour as being sort of metal armour with a layer of black lacquer on top of it. And I'm thinking as he's fighting and murdering and killing all these people that's going to get pretty scuffed up, because he does a lot of it. And then the last layer that I'm adding is dirt. Because Dimitri doesn't take very good care of himself, and therefore probably doesn't take very good care of his armour either. And then I'm sealing all of those layers in with a final coat of clear hex flags, just to keep it nice and secure and protected. And that's pretty much it. There was a few finishing details to put on, like the little blue bits, which I did with a similar wrapping technique and gluing it on. And then his armour is covered in little rivets, for which I got my local fabric shop to cover some buttons using the same material that I'd used to wrap the armour, and then used those cover buttons as the rivets. Just, again, sewing them in. We are using sewing techniques for as much of this as we can. This armour I have now, it's been about a year. I've worn it 2 or 3 times. It's got some wear and tear. Some of the glue is definitely coming off the lining. But it's still the most comfortable armour and one of my most comfortable cosplays ever, which allows me to do antics like this.
Middle and take a video.
Lion? Lion in the middle? AO.
Blue lion in the middle?
Okay?
Yes.
Circle,
Okay.
circle,
Circle, circle, circle,
circle, circle, circle, circle, circle, circle, circle, circle, circle, circle,